I've been a fan of Richards for a long time, which it's been it's kind of an unusual character in terms of obviously being a pop star back in the 80s, a very big pop star, certainly in the UK and Europe, and then to obviously transitioned into clergyman, Church of England clergyman, and he kind of became this the famous priest. I mean, it's hard to describe like how that transition came, but he's very, very funny. He's very acerbic and witty, and I guess he just fit naturally as a broadcaster, really. And he did the bit of that in between being a pop star and a vicar. So as he became a vicar, I think he assumed he just carried on with that. And so I was aware of him from various things in the UK, whether it's Have I Got News for You or Radio 4 or whatever. And I just found him fascinating as someone who's not a religious person in my own life. I just found him and his whole approach to, well, not just to his religion, but to life in general, just really, really interesting. He's a fascinating man. And so I was very aware of of him and his output, but I confess I hadn't read the book. I didn't even know he'd written a series of murder mysteries. And so when this came up and I saw Richard Cole's name, I was thrilled, and I sort of dived straight into the script.
France is very different than Spain. There's a color palette in France that's different than it is in Spain. There's a mood that's different. There's an energy that's different. France has a very sort of purple and green and candlelit, romantic sort of feel. Spain is orange and yellow and full of passion, and the people are like that. The actors are like that. The actors work differently. Even having French actors in Spain now, they work differently, and then we work differently. So there's all these personalities at play here, and whether they're getting along or whether they're bumping chests about something, the energies are different.
And I started working on it, and as I was working on it, I went to a children's bookstore to see what else was out there, and I noticed one thing that was really disappointing was that there were tons of books for boys that where the boy got to ride a dragon and fight a monster and save the world, and then there were books for girls where the girl took care of a pony, and I just didn't know any women like that. I mean, my mother was a very strong, independent woman. All the women in my life that I've had relationships have always been tough and smart and snarky. Not the kind of kids that sit around waiting for Prince Charming to rescue them. They just go out and rescue Prince Charming. So, but at the same time, I wanted boys to read it. So finding, the Puck character, which becomes a big part of the series, was just luck, and just from my William Shakespeare classes in college. A Midsummer Night's Dream had always been my favorite of his plays, and Puck is so central to that. And I was just like, that is the most obnoxious little boy, and he's a lot like my little brother Eddie. I'll just stick him in there, and then I just had the perfect triangle of characters.
For this show, it was a process, right? Because it wasn't just like, oh, sure, spinoff, let's go. It was, oh man, 14 years of TV and it's all going on my shoulders. I don't really operate out of fear. I'm not somebody who really succumbs to pressure and stuff like that, but I had to reconcile, carrying on the show. And each moment of clarity was very clear. So meeting the Brandons was very clear. Like, okay, I can work with these guys. They're smart, they're receptive, they're collaborative. Meeting Sonequa was a huge step. I remember talking to my wife and she just kept saying, your partner has to be someone you want to work with every day, off camera. You have to have that bond. And I felt it instantly with her. And it really, and on screen, her work already spoke for itself. But meeting her, getting to know her, that was another affirmation that, okay, I'm moving in the right direction with this show.
What can did I tell you? Joan Ridley is named after John Ridley, so that's interesting. The last time we talked, and Barbie and Hank have written a really cool iconoclast of a character. She lives for her work, but she's kind of rock and roll. I think, she's been a Doctor Without Borders for a long time. I think she slept with one of the Rolling Stones, and she was probably there in some Black Hawk Down. So she's really fun to play, and I really enjoy her, and I love her courage and her bravery. And it's lovely being with such a good, kind, talented cast. And when Barbie and Hank aren't drunk, they're amazing.
Yeah, and I just really loved that she was shouldering such responsibility and she was so stuck. It kind of came to me at a point in my life where I was feeling a bit stuck. I've been ill for a while, and I just, felt a bit down about the world, and so did Maeve. And so I really wanted to play her. And I'm so grateful that Brad let me
Oh, it was easy.
play her.
It was easy. It was an easy choice, trust me.
Tom, what about you? How did you find out about this project and get involved?
Yeah, well, they sent me the script to read, and I was immediately blown away. I was enthralled. I was deeply moved by the character of Robbie and the situation he found himself in. And I was also desperate to get more scripts. Because part of what Brad executed so brilliantly was at the end of every episode, you go, come on.
How is Wolf doing without his BFF right by his side physically?
Jealous, sad. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm being answered for. There you have it. I don't even need to respond.
Right.
I think that the bond between Wolf and Pierce is something that it's interesting. There's a bit of a mirror from the first season. In the first episode of the first season, she comes to a mildly, maybe not completely disgraced, but certainly downtrodden Wolf and invites him back into her world. And there's an interesting dynamic shift that's kind of an echo of that between Wolf and Pierce in the beginning of season 2, because he does realize that the place is not as dynamic or effective or meaningful without her. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to lose your right hand.
How do you think Heart and Hustle Houston is redefining unscripted television?
I wouldn't even say redefining. I would say refining. I think that these.
I like that.
I think that we are, though. These women are thriving, and through the tears and the tea and the triumphs, we are telling a whole new story. I think what I think about is what my mom always says to me when I call her wanting some advice. She always says to me, the strength of tea comes out in hot water. And the truth is that I've always wanted to do a show that showed conflict with class. I've never wanted to do that show where we were doing all the stuff that we were trying to negate for the black woman. I always believed in conflict with class. And I think that this show is showing us that we can have the hard conversations, that we can have the tough moments, and we come out better on the end.
Eventually, someone said to me, I don't remember who it was, but in order to tell this story fully, you have to embody him fully. To honor the victims, you have to show how charming he could be or how convincing he could be, so that we understand why they got in that car with him or why they took that job at PDM, why they were at his house, drinking with him and were in that vulnerable position. And so it was this strange experience of this guy who, by most accounts, was very jovial and friendly until you were alone with him and this other side of him came out. Early on, I had this feeling of am I too likable? Am I too friendly? Am I too charming? And then I had to eventually just give over to that's the thing of how he was able to get away with this for so long.